Hi everyone, this is the Shop Stool Podcast, episode 14 of season 3. As always, I'm going to start by introducing my two co-hosts. Joey, how are you?
I am not too bad. A little bit of a sore arm. Got my second jab, but otherwise I'm good.
Good on you. And Bryan, how are you? You're all vaxxed up, aren't you?
I am well and truly vaxxed. I've been annihilated by several American followers on social media, so yeah, I feel as though I've completed the entire process.
So yeah, you've gone through it, yeah. And my name is Robin. Welcome to the show, everyone. Now, before kicking off, we do have a guest tonight. Before kicking off, I just want to mention that this is going to be the second last episode of the season of the year. So we'll do our last show in a couple of weeks, and then that will be it for the year. But we'll get into that in that show. So tonight we have a guest and a long-time supporter of the show. He's a woodworker out of Sydney's Northern Beaches, and he does a little beekeeping on the side. More on that later, I hope. I've personally been watching his Instagram for years, and the process has been incredible. I'm super excited to welcome Leeroy Reading from Big Rock Timberworks to the show. How are you this evening?
I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on. So we always try and get a bit of insight into how our guests got to where they are. So just interested to hear what your story was as you came up to get to this point where you are now, which we'll get to a bit later on.
Yeah, I was actually thinking a little bit about this question because I knew that it was coming, being a long-time listener of the podcast. So I did think about it a little bit, and it gave me a little bit of a different perspective of actually where I did come from, because I hadn't really thought about it too much up until this point. But when I was a kid, I have a bit of a different way to getting to the point that I'm at now. So when I was a kid, manual labour wasn't for me. I wasn't allowed in the workshop. It was don't touch that. It was get out of the workshop. It was, I think my old man was almost ashamed of his, he was a fitter and turner by trade. And so he didn't, it wasn't for me. It was, he wanted to be an academic and so he was ashamed of that manual labour that he sort of felt like he was forced into. So it wasn't encouraged in me at all as a young bloke. So I went through, primary school, high school. I never built anything. I never did anything like that. It wasn't until I was 30 and bought my first home, and I was like, I
wish I'd had those skills in me.
Yeah. And so I had a good mate who was a carpenter, a fantastic carpenter. And he was like, oh, mate, I'll help you renovate your new place. And so we started sort of working together, and I just started picking it up and loving it, just loving every minute of it. And he sort of encouraged me to come and work with him. And he sort of saw in me that I had a bit of a knack for it, a bit of an eye. And so I basically went through an unticketed apprenticeship with him. And so I got to learn a lot of things. And then when my daughter was about to come along, I thought, well, I want to make her crib and everything in her room. I wanted it to be made by my hand. So I started making my first piece of furniture, which was a crib. And I sort of started going, I didn't have a lot of tools as such, like furniture making type tools. I had more carpentry type stuff. So as I was going, I got to a point, it took me 8 months to make this crib, and I got to a certain point and I was like, this isn't going to work. I can't get this square. This is 1.5 degrees out.
Yeah.
It's not going to go together. And my carpenter mate came round and he was like, what is taking so long? Give me a look at this thing. And he looked at it and he was like, mate, just glue it, clamp it, done.
Yeah.
And so what took me 8 months took him 30 seconds to tell me to pull my finger out and stop trying to get it perfect and just get it done. And so then as soon as I built that piece, and I was quite proud of myself, I just went into a deep dive into furniture making. I read everything I could. I spoke to everyone I could. I, watched YouTube. I watched you guys. You've been a big inspiration for me and helped along the way. And I started reaching out to people and sort of trying to figure out, how can I take this newfound passion and turn it into something, because it was burning inside me that I loved every second of it. And then straight away I thought, this is a business. And way before I was ready, I actually reached out to Joey and I said, I want to be a furniture maker, and should I go to a school? Should I go get a trade? And he said, no. Just do it.
It's all your fault, Joe.
And so I just did it.
You probably should have got a second opinion. But
it's all your fault.
Yeah.
So that's how it all sort of came about and started.
Can we go back to the crib there 1 second? So I've done a couple of crib designs, and I think your approach to doing the crib solves a really tricky problem with cribs, and that's how to connect the front panels into the end panels. And generally you have to use demon bolts and threaded inserts and things, but by doing that plywood ring around the top out of one sheet and the dowels on the corners, it's a really, really nice solution to a tricky problem. And especially because it was one of your first projects, it's a really smart way for people to approach their first designs and not try to learn everything at once, but try to make everything as simple as possible. Because I find that I nearly take that approach now in furniture, that I go to the absolute extreme and then try to pare it back. So I think getting your brain working like that in terms of design is a really, really smart approach.
Because also that, it's an old cliche, but simplicity is the best solution. Any engineer just goes for the simplest option. Yep. And I think furniture in general is just simple shapes. And how can you make the shape interact with you and what it has to do, i.e. be a set of drawers or be a workbench? How can you make that simple thing be usable? And then if it looks really nice as well, then that's a bonus.
Yeah, I really just went into that build with just wanting the stacked plywood.
Yeah, so maybe describe it to people. So each headboard is laminated maybe 60 mil thick strips of plywood. Are they 18 mil ply? Or?
Yeah, they're 25 mil.
Something like that? 25 mil, okay, nice and chunky.
Yeah, this thing weighs an absolute ton. Oh my God, I just had no real idea how heavy it was going to be, and I just kept stacking and stacking and stacking, and I didn't hollow anything out. It is just solid as a rock. The house could fall down.
Doesn't really matter, because the heavier it is, the less chance of baby throwing a tantrum and knocking it over. But yeah, I just really like the solution of the plywood ring along the top and locking all the corners in and using the strength, the cross-laminated nature of the plywood to hold it all together is really nice.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
So I think you're probably the first guest that we've had on the show who hasn't come from a trade background, which is amazing. So I have a story similar to that. When I was growing up in primary school, we had a choice, this senior primary, we had a choice of, and we had one of those days where the different universities come around to your school and they tell you about what they can offer. And we had a choice between either going to a university or what we would call a technical college, which was real hands-on trade, that kind of thing.
Like a TAFE.
TAFE, exactly, pretty much the same thing. And I will never forget one of my teachers looking at me dead in the eyes and saying, "You won't be going to that one. You're going to be going to university." I.e., you're too smart to go to a place like that. I mean, I wasn't particularly smart, but he was sort of saying, don't waste your life by going to that. And look at it today. I mean, obviously this was 20 years ago, but now woodworkers and trades are celebrated. I mean, trades make some of the best money in the industry.
They are, and I was just going to bring that up. Tradesmen in general are earning bloody good money, but I feel like that there's still that same stigma around.
Do you think they care about the stigma when you're running a plumbing business that's bringing in $1 million a year?
No, I don't think anyone cares about it.
I think we celebrate each other.
Yeah,
we do that well. It's an echo chamber of patting makers on the back. We're good at that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, really interesting, because I just thought that was all that was maybe part of South Africa where I grew up, but here in Australia, I have to beg trades to come run and do work on my house. It's a very different world now. Yeah. So 8 months. 4 years that you've been properly woodworking for. I didn't realize it was that short.
Yeah.
That just makes it even better, the work that's coming out.
Okay, so how long between finishing the crib in that 30-second glue up and then somehow working out that you can make $20 building something for someone else?
It was literally instant.
Right.
Yeah, it was just like, this is what I want to do straight away.
So then how did you go from kind of fuffing over the crib to, I'll make this for you, random person?
Maybe it was just an excuse to buy tools.
Yeah.
But I did have a business mindset straight away, and I did sort of set myself up. I did think, okay, this is a business. This is what I want to do. This is like, how am I going to get there? What are the steps I need to take? And so straight away, I registered like my ABN, got the business set up. Got things going with that business mindset right from the get-go, and just started sort of getting the word out there. Hey, if you want something, I'll build it for you.
And in terms of getting the word out there, what did that involve?
I mean, at the start, it's friends, and then it's friends of friends, and the circle just sort of grows, I guess, like it's a ripple in a pond. And it's still small at the moment, and I hope that it grows bigger.
Yeah, that's the getting your first client and then your second client can often be a big gap. I know personally I don't get a lot of work because I'm not hammering away at the marketing. So it seems like those early days are just super tough where Joe and Bryan, I would assume you guys at this stage would get annoyed about the number of quotes that you have to do because people are just constantly hammering you for work.
Yeah, I'll say yes.
I'll say maybe.
Because
I am annoyed that the quotes I'm doing are not the ones I want to be doing. That's the problem. And I don't know the secret answer to this, so you all can enlighten me. How do you get the work you want to be working on?
Say no to the jobs that you don't want to be working on.
Yeah, but then I can't eat.
Eating is also important.
Because I've always been a believer of having bread and butter type work.
Do you know what? I think it's the balance. I think it's that you take the bread and butter work, but it never touches your business account. Like, it doesn't end up on social media. It doesn't end up being promoted. Yeah. These are just things that you work on in the background. Yeah. That you work out. Like, for me, obviously we're about to reopen in Melbourne, and I had phone calls from a restaurant client that I do a few different pieces for, and they're wanting to sand and refinish tables. This is not something that I want to be doing, but I know I can charge an hourly rate, and I know that today I will have made more money as one day than making furniture for a day. Yeah. But I'm not going to tell other restaurants that I do refinishing of tables. Yeah. It's I'm trying to keep this client sweet because I know that they bring better work in. So yeah, I think it's about knowing when to say no to jobs and when to say yes to jobs. And obviously, when you start saying yes to jobs and publicizing them, you're more likely to get similar jobs.
Yeah, there's definitely, maybe you've seen this, Leeroy, that when you say yes or you do one or two pieces, you tend to get a run of similar things because their friends or family and whoever sees their Instagram and stuff, they see it and then decide they want something just like that. And so you end up kind of doing a run of really similar things, and then it eventually moves on to some other run of another similar bunch of things.
Yeah, so I've thought about this a little bit too, and my thinking is that to do the work that makes the money, and make sure that I am designing things and making spec pieces in between those more monotonous builds, and just keep putting, like, what you put out there, you know, hopefully comes back at some point. So like what Bryan said, yeah, I'm trying to make sure that I put in those spec pieces, those original designs, you know, enter something into the Wood Review Maker of the Year awards, which was a scary thing for me to do, but I got it in just before the deadline this year.
Is that for this current one or for this year?
Okay. Yeah. So like I'm proud of it, but it was a scary thing to go, oh, okay, real woodworkers, real furniture makers, here's my contribution.
I think that was scary. I entered for the first time this year, and the same thing, just made it within like 24 hours before entries closed. And it's scary as shit to push the send button, and you're like, shit, other people,
scary for you.
Other people who know what they're doing are going to look at this and critique it, you know. And I saw Bryan, you put some stuff in as well, although you've been in a bunch of competitions, so I'm sure you don't care.
I'm surprised you're allowed to, Bryan, because you are very, very cozy.
No, hey, whoa.
No. I'm not insinuating. I'm just saying I thought you would be far too close to the judges.
They do actually have rules on. So I had written an article for them last year, the year before, and I couldn't enter the Maker of the Awards as a result of that article. So I think you have to be 2 years from having direct involvement in the magazine before you can enter.
Okay, yeah.
But don't you be dragging my name through the mud, Robin.
No, that's a compliment.
Yeah, so I got a couple of pieces that I entered this year. Like I said, it's always a good thing, even just to see your work alongside other pieces and of makers that you admire and respect is always a good thing.
Yep.
So you entered the Kameko door cabinet, was it? It's like a tea cabinet?
Yeah, like a little tea cabinet.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. It was literally the first time I'd done just about everything in that cabinet.
Cool.
So yeah, it was a good learning experience, but it was one of those things that, like, I made it all around the Kumiko panel, and everything else just sort of went off that. But I just wanted to make the Kumiko panel, and sort of see where that went. Yeah.
Can someone explain this Kumiko trend? I don't get. It's not. I mean, it's not ugly, but why is it why is it such a thing that all woodworkers want to do?
For me, it was a challenge. Like, it was a challenge to the patience and the accuracy and the repetitiveness. Like, my hands were crippled after doing it. I think there's over 300 individual pieces of timber in that panel. Yeah, and they're all hand done with a chisel and a block. Yeah, it was.
I don't know much about it. I haven't looked into what the traditional kind of use and kind of anything about it, really. So I can't really give it any opinion as to why people are suddenly using it. But it has been around a lot in the last year or 2 years.
I suppose maybe a bit of the fetishization of Japanese joinery, maybe. But I'm guessing that it was used back then, like, and even recently in Japan, that it was an expression for carpenters to really show off their skills, because a lot of the like nailless and glueless joinery that they're doing in houses, it will end up being covered or not seen.
Yeah,
so
true.
to have a really spectacular panel with no glue, no nails, no nothing, it is a challenge. Yeah, I haven't taken one on yet, and I'd be intimidated by it.
Like I say, I don't know anything about it, but it seems to me something that you might do as a pastime.
Yeah.
Where it's almost like an equivalent to whittling, where you could probably, knowing how the Japanese work, they generally sit down and hold like a board with their feet as their workbench. You could probably see somebody sitting down at like smoko break and whittling a few pieces, slicing off a couple bits with a chisel and just seeing how they fit inside of a frame, and you just keep kind of making a pattern. That's just complete guesswork, so who knows.
Do you want I've just googled it. Do you want the official?
Sure.
So each design has a meaning or is mimicking a pattern in nature and is thought to be a good omen. The patterns are designed to look good but also distribute light and wind in a calming and beautiful way.
All right.
That kind of makes sense.
Do you know how big they get? It seems to reason that they would get quite big, like on their kind of rice paper screens or something.
Yeah, so in traditional Japanese architecture, they go really big, but I think the new trend, because they do take an awful long time to make, I think it is more make boxes or box lids or panels for doors, like the tea cabinet out of them.
That tea cabinet is $47,000 too. The amount of time it took me. God.
Leroy, you mentioned kind of doing spec pieces between less interesting work, and I probably said this to you before as well, that doing those spec pieces is such a good way to learn and kind of build your toolbox of skills, because until you try something like doing some half-blind dovetails and doing just some weird things with angles and joinery that wouldn't usually come up, that's when when someone comes to you with something that's slightly oddball, you can say, hey, I've got the skills to, I know I've done this at least once, I'm sure I can do it again for you, I can like do this kind of joinery. So really, I think it boosts your confidence as a woodworker when you just play around with strange joinery and techniques, and
absolutely,
just to have it in your back pocket and say, oh yeah, I've done it before, and that really gives clients a confidence boost, even if you've only done it once before and you can't really remember how you did it, but you can say you did it.
But even if you haven't done it, it's the problem solving that goes into those pieces where you haven't done something before, but then you have confidence that you can see it through to the end, whether you knew how to do it beforehand or not. That's the confidence that those pieces sort of give me, that I can say yes to things, even if I don't. I may not know how exactly I'm going to do it at the start. I'll be able to work it out through the critical thinking.
That's very much how I am. I'll typically take on jobs just because the client says no one else wants to do it. And I'll say, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Don't know how I'm going to do it. How much money have you got?
Yeah.
And typically they're the ones that end up on videos and stuff because they're interesting.
Yeah.
So, Leroy, are you doing this full time now?
So I am a firefighter with Fire Rescue New South Wales. So we have a pretty good shift work roster. So we basically do a 24-hour shift, then we have 24 hours off, do another 24-hour shift, and then have 5 days off.
Oh, sweet.
So, and then it rolls around on an 8-day week, basically. So it gives a lot of time. So it basically just means I work every day. That's okay.
I love the way Joey's like, oh, sweet. It's like, Joey, when was the last time you went into a burning building?
I wanted to be a firefighter.
Did you?
That was my first. I applied to be a firefighter after I got all over my cancer and all that bollocks. Yeah. And I was like, right, going to make a big change. Couldn't get through the maths, so that was me going.
Maths?
Yeah.
Math.
There's not many spaces available, and there was 2 spaces available in Auckland for like a full-time like live-in type thing. and there was like 400 guys showed up for the job, so they just had to cull the herd, and it started off with like a 5-page like university level maths, and we had 20 minutes, and I was just like, this is beyond me.
Yeah. when I applied for the fire brigade, there were 12,000 applicants.
Jeez.
And 120 of us got jobs.
Yeah,
It was a
great.
2-year process.
Whoa.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yep.
About 15 years later.
You got some seriously good math skills as well, then.
Well, I don't know about that. Maybe just the competition was lower.
So the first conversation that Leeroy and I had was after we did a Shop Stool Podcast episode in December of 2019. And I talked about this guy, Leeroy, who left us a message or something. He's a part-time firefighter. And Leeroy got back to me to say that he wasn't a part-time volunteer or part-time firefighter.
Yeah, he called me a volunteer.
Volunteer, and how everyone at the station was going to now take the piss because I've called him a volunteer firefighter.
They're all like, we're getting paid for this.
That was December of 2019. So, geez, it's almost 2 years now. Yeah. Is the goal to eventually, and maybe you don't want to make this public, but is the goal to eventually leave the firefighting behind?
Look, I can't really see myself at 55, 60 jumping onto the back of a fire truck and running into buildings in the middle of the night. So hopefully, like there is, I think with any emergency service, you have so much to give, and you hope that you don't give all of it before the end of your career. And everyone has a limit of what happens on shift and the experiences that you have, and everybody has one job too many, and you hope you don't get there. I don't want to get there.
Yeah.
So if I can do something that I'm really passionate about, that I love, and before that point, that would be great.
Yeah.
But I love it. At the moment, I love it.
Awesome.
And it's a good balance between the two. It's been a big week for me. So I've just moved into my first commercial space 10 days ago.
I was just about to ask you this. So you're in Northern Beaches, like some of the most expensive real estate in Sydney, in Australia. How did you go with finding a workshop?
It took me a really long time. Where I am, there isn't a lot of commercial space available at all. So it took me about 4 months, and in that time, I think about 6 properties came up that were appropriate on that sort of smaller size. So I was looking at something around 120 square metres, and that was basically, I'll tell you the numbers. It was about $35,000 a year plus GST for that 120 square metres, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
So the place that I've moved into is 306 square metres for the same money.
Jeez.
Are you going to sublet some of it out? Or
Yeah.
keep it to yourself?
I've thought about lots of things.
That's massive.
So there's pros and cons. I don't really know where I'm at the moment. Like I'm just I'm trying to find my feet. I'll definitely be putting it out there, but I'd prefer it to be something a bit more organic rather than something that is forced upon me to pay the rent.
Yeah.
So I have to be working with someone or sharing a space with someone under conditions of needing their rent money. So we'll see how we go.
Yes, some food for thought would be that as you grow and your work inevitably will become bigger, no matter what it is, the things you produce will become larger and harder to move by yourself. Having someone who's available to lift stuff that you can trust and you can talk to kind of as and when you need to, and not have to like plan it weeks in advance to have someone take a day off work or whatever just so you can lift this thing up a flight of stairs. Having someone else in the workshop is a massive boost. If you had someone like yourself share their workshop with you, put a big wall up between it, you don't, like 300 whatever meters is more than I need. I'm not having that much. Like you will feel like a tadpole in this giant swimming pool. And
I'm coming from a 20-foot shipping container.
Exactly. So
I was falling all over myself. I had to be a contortionist to get anything out.
Yeah. I would just keep that in mind, that sharing the space with someone else, even to the point where you can share tools and stuff. I've thought about that myself in the past. Certainly when COVID first hit, I was thinking, should I empty the workshop out and have someone else share my tools, and then we can kind of work hand in hand and stuff. But it's definitely worth a thought, I think.
Speaking of tools, I've got a new panel saw arriving tomorrow.
Bam!
Oh, nice one.
I'm so excited.
Is it a Laguna like this jointer I've been reading about that caused problems?
A Laguna jointer.
I wanted to hear about it.
I won't buy anything Laguna again.
Okay.
Really? I thought they were supposed to be a pretty solid brand.
I've had nothing but troubles with that joiner from day one, and it's still not resolved 2.5 years later.
I wanted to know why you decided to buy Laguna when it had to be imported special and stuff from the States. I don't know what you paid for it, but it seemed an odd choice for me.
Resellers. We've got Laguna resellers in Australia, I think. Do we not?
We do, yeah.
I think Carbotech.
Carbotech do now. At that time, it was Gregory's Machinery were the importer.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was basically to get a 12-inch jointer.
Is it 12?
Yeah, it's big.
That's why.
Is it a combination?
It was the only one that I could really get.
Is it a combination, like a jointer thicknesser? No, a 12-inch jointer.
Yep.
Okay, so they're hard to find, so you have to get them special ordered. Yep. And so
why I decided to get a 12-inch joiner in a
shipping container
is beyond me. But I was just so confident that I was going to expand beyond that. Yeah. So everything that I bought, I was just like, well, it's not going to be here long. I'll soon be moving on, and I'll get the one-time tool. Buy once, cry once, which was probably a mistake, but here we are.
But to be fair, a jointer is one of those tools where you want it to be as beefy as possible, in my opinion. Especially when it comes to hardwoods, you don't want to be. I think I've actually got an 8-inch. It's either an 8 or a 10, and the amount of times that I'd wish the bed was just a little bit bigger, just a tiny bit bigger, would make my life so much easier. So what's wrong with what's gone wrong with it?
The fence is concave and not straight along its length. So it makes it hard to if you're jointing an edge, it's very hard to square up because you can get it square from top to bottom, and then if you've got a shorter piece,
it's falling over.
Then a tiny bit moved over, so it's hard to get things square sometimes. And then the dust collection has been a problem where I've got a 3 horsepower dust collector, and I'm just getting chips flying at my face and covering my feet. And
that's weird.
Yeah, I can't.
It's a parallelogram, is it? Is it a parallelogram body? The way,
yeah.
And that's, correct me if I'm wrong, the parallelogram is the new one, that's the better option, whereas the jibs is the one that you don't want. Is that correct?
It's like a dovetailed wave. Which is just hard to adjust, I think. Whereas a parallelogram is a bit easier to adjust. But let's don't talk about tools that I don't like.
Okay, what kind of big, massive panel saw have you got?
I'm getting an Altendorf.
Oh my god.
WA8X.
I don't know what that means, but
let's have a look.
Is it CNC?
It's got a CNC rip fence.
Oh my god.
A 3.8 table.
Yeah.
Which one is it? WA8X.
X. It's pretty sexy.
Is it CNC height and angle or just a fence?
Just a fence, just the rip fence.
Yeah. Well, that is bloody useful. I tell you what, if I could do anything, I would CNC my rip fence because I hate having to run around.
That was my thought.
It's such a pain in the ass.
A one-man shop, having to walk around the table constantly would just save me so much money.
It doesn't sound like it. People say, it's not worth it just to walk around. You just move the sliding table, and it's not. It's when you're doing it, 400 times a day. That is a pain in the butt.
Joe, sorry, for non-panel saw people out there like me, CNC rip fence.
So, it's got a little LCD display that hangs in front of your face, and if you want to cut a panel 600 wide, you just type in 600, and the fence moves over to 600.
What?
Yeah.
Because, and it's a legitimate problem, if you got a 3.8 meter sliding table, and let's say 3 meters of it is sticking out behind you, you've either got to walk 3 meters back around the thing and then back 3 meters up to the fence, move it over to whatever measurement, and then walk back around and start the machine and cut. Or you've got to slide the sliding table all the way forward, which may not be possible if you've got a sheet of panel sitting on the sliding table, so that doesn't work. Sometimes you've got to crawl underneath the panel, underneath the slide if you've got shit backed in the way you can't get around it anyway. It's just not fun. So
it is just it's a totally different world from table saws, huh?
Yeah.
I must say, I've always said I'm going to get a saw stop eventually, but if I could afford a panel saw, I might, and get the saw stop because of the technology, because it's safer.
Yeah, you need that.
Just from everything everyone has said, a panel saw is just as safe because of the operation.
Here's my big controversial, my 2 cents worth.
Heard it here first, people.
Tell me, why is it you can go to a high school and they'll put you in front of a bandsaw and let you cut away? There's nothing wrong with working in front of a bandsaw because it's safe. Why is that any safer than working with a table saw? Like, it's got a spinning blade that's going to cut your hand off. And I would argue that you can cut your hand off easier on a bandsaw. Maybe not off, but it'd be halfway through.
I think the emergency department statistics would be the ultimate say in that.
Well, I have...
Not that I know them, but...
A very unfortunate...
Don't talk to a butcher.
A very unfortunate friend of mine in Melbourne suffered a table saw accident this weekend.
Oh, no shit.
Really?
It's a big shout out if he's listening to Scotty at Timber Shack. He had a kickback incident.
Yeah.
The ripping 45 degree long French cleats and kickback into his stomach, sent him over and hand into the blade.
Oh, yeah, wow.
I haven't heard of that one before.
Now, can I just say, after hearing that is not an unsafe... Like, that is not the saw.
No.
Anything to do with the saw. And you could trip on anything and fall into a bandsaw blade as well.
Yeah, you
can. And so I think probably most people would agree there. But I just find it odd that there's this, like, fear, I think, of table saws. Well, yeah, it's a big blade, and especially if you're getting a really big table saw that's throwing like a 500mm blade, there's a certain amount of respect, I think, extra that you might want to have. But like if you got a panel saw, it's got a guard that comes right down over the blade. It's much safer than any guard on a bandsaw. I mean, you've got to want to put your hand in the blade if you've got the guard in place.
One thing. Firstly, I'm still massive saw shop guy. I would not change my table saw for anything. Like, I absolutely love it. I love the blade on it. Not the blade. I love the fence on it. I like the tables on it. Stays flat. It's a good quality saw. And then you add in the safety factor. But in terms of the injuring yourself on a bandsaw, the fact that like you'd have to be doing very well to get the same kind of kickback on a bandsaw because the force is down. Yeah. And also, you don't have to push anything all the way through the bandsaw. If you have like rear access to the bandsaw, you can push it halfway. You can reasonably safely leave the timber with the bandsaw on if you've got feather boards keeping it against the fence, walk around the bandsaw and pull it from the other side. So your hands never need to get within 30 centimeters of the blade. Whereas with a table saw, you're always using a push stick or something. There's an element of, if you do get kickback, your hand reaches out in front of you to break your fall, and that's what's happening.
Yeah,
I'm
always going over the blade. Yeah.
That's certainly a different thing. Falling like that seems, I've never heard of that, and it's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I would like to point out any video by Jimmy DiResta where his fingers are within 3 millimeters of the blade.
Terrifying.
But you sometimes have to use the bandsaw in that way. Like when you cut cabriolet legs, you're cutting all sorts of crazy ways, and there's no way you've got any fences set up. It's just, you've just got to be conscious that there's a big blade and you've got 400 mil of blade exposed, and you just got to deal with the fact that you can't move in this general vicinity.
Or you just say, I am not making cabriolet legs.
Yeah, well, but got to have some fun.
Yeah.
Because I guess the difference between having your finger 30 centimeters away and 3 centimeters away, there isn't any difference in terms of your danger.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, the blade's
it's
not
still
doing
not cutting
anything
you.
different.
Yeah.
It's still not doing anything differently. So
You mean on the bandsaw, Rob?
Yeah. Not table saw, on the bandsaw. Yeah. Because I must say, I get quite intimate with my bandsaw while I'm making cuts, but it's always
a bit of light jazz.
It's
You
lights
starting a new channel, Robin?
Candles.
As long as you've asked consent.
It's always just very calculated, because whether my finger's that close to the blade or that, it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
But I feel like that to a degree with the table saw. Like, I could be a meter away from the blade and use my sliding table, or if I'm stupid, I can rip a really thin piece of wood and just push it through with my thumb, and it's 40 mil away from the blade. I know that if my hand's resting against the fence, it can't touch the blade. And I probably should use a push stick, and I do most of the time. But sometimes I just run through with my hand running against on the fence. And what I do is I hook my little finger over top of my fence, and it's locked on.
Because there is no force in this universe stronger than a pinky.
No, exactly.
Like I've got nothing's going to remove
Popeye little finger.
If our lawyers are listening, can we say that is not it's not the way to stop yourself cutting your fingers off?
It stops your hand from falling off into the blade.
Yeah.
So, Leeroy, the panel saw's going straight into the new shop.
Yeah, arrives tomorrow. Been a bit of a logistical nightmare, but hopefully it all goes smoothly tomorrow, and I'm away.
Are you having the guys come and assemble it and tweak it?
Yep. So that
cool.
happens on Thursday.
Nice.
But I've just got to get it into the workshop. So I've got to hire a forklift. I've got to hire a forklift driver. Get up a ramp. Get it in there. It's.
And you got 3-phase power and stuff?
Yeah, I just installed all that today.
Jeez, that's an expensive little thing.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, Leroy, so
I'm dropping money like it's hot.
Your choice to go for a panel saw would indicate to me that you're now looking to get into more built-in sort of cabinetry work. Would I be right?
I'm looking to give myself as many options as possible.
Yep.
So again, like I want to keep doing those spec pieces, and I'd love to be able to have bespoke furniture be every single job. But I think the reality is, especially as I get started, I'm going to have bills to pay. So I plan on reaching out to builders and carpenters and saying, I'll cut you and edge your panels for you, and I'll have it ready for you next day.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can give me your order. I'll, do my day's work, spend an hour or two at the end of the day, cut those panels and have them ready for the chippies to come collect, and they can do their installs. So that's going to be a component. And I've got a whole range of things that I'm sort of. I just don't want to. I don't want to keep myself locked into. I am a bespoke furniture maker. That's all I'm going to do, because if that can't pay the bills, then what do I do? It's game over. So I just want to give myself as many options as possible, and and not pigeonhole myself, because I think I did that early on in the business, where I was like, I'm not going to do anything with melamine because melamine's a cheap material and I'm not going to do that. But then I sort of looked at myself and said, really, you're being an idiot to turn away that sort of work, because sometimes it is the best material for the job. If somebody wants a new kitchen cabinet and they've got, 3 cabinets that they want, there's no point trying to upsell them into a birch ply cabinet because it's better, because they don't care. And so to turn away that work over something that's silly, over me being high and mighty over a material, I think I've gotten away from that, and a material is a material, and the best material for the job is the best material for the job.
Yep.
So that's my thought.
I get that. Yeah, something we glossed over as well with your giant big saw is that it's probably better than your jointer at straightening big long sticks of wood. You don't have to. You can just clamp it on and run it through, and you bam, you got a straight edge. So that's really useful for those.
So when do you plan on being officially up and running in the new shop? Because you're still moving in now.
Yeah, it's a bit of a process. Like I've got a couple of jobs on the go at the moment, where I've had to basically speak to clients who have been wonderful and just say, look, this has all happened really quickly. I'm going to need a little bit more time to get these done. So I've basically been doing 18-hour days just to try and get up and running, trying to get these jobs that I already had on the go out the door, and the 1,000 other things that I've sort of had to do to get myself going again. It's been a huge amount of things just to think things like organising waste. It's not something that I really thought too much of, but commercial waste is totally different to a domestic style waste. So I had to work out, they sort of ask you, okay, how much waste are you going to have?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Right, so you don't get allocated like a wheelie bin, but the commercial version of it.
No, you get a wheelie bin, but then you got to pay for your like actual dumpster type one that maybe gets emptied every month or 2 weeks or something.
Yeah, so you have to set up a schedule, and they ask you, okay, well, what do you want your schedule to be? I don't know what I want my schedule to be. There's been so many things like that. Just trying to organise insurances for the building, upping my liability insurance and things like that. Getting finance with machinery brokers. The list has just been a mile long. Just trying to get working through leases, trying to get a straight answer out of someone to know what a commercial space is worth, or even just being able to get somebody to take you through a listing, because it seems like the commercial spaces, it's very much like it's like a closed club. So lots of commercial owners buy lots of commercial properties. So the real estate agents, to make their job a bit easier, they just keep going to those same people and they offer the spaces to those people who they know that they get the deal. So it's very hard to even get a viewing of a commercial property, at least where I am. It was just hard to find anything at all.
So to someone who's looking at getting a commercial property, especially considering what you just said, would you advise waiting till you were at a particular point in your career, so bringing in a certain amount of money every month, or do you think that it's something that you may have in hindsight done a bit earlier?
I think that the time, there's never going to be a perfect time. You're never going to be especially going from a very small space, like I was in the shipping container. Like I could not turn over the work required because I just didn't have the space. If I glued something up, that was it. Like I was done for the day because I couldn't physically move anywhere else in the shop. I could never walk around a piece, so I'd have to turn it around within the container. So there were so many like triple, quadruple, 50 times handling something that I couldn't charge for, because I can't just charge for my inefficiencies. So to me, I was at a point where, okay, like the business is good, it's viable, I'm making money, and I'm in a position where I'm in a fortunate position that I have a salary job. So that for me, the time was, well, the time's now. Like, it would have been good to do it 20 years ago, but the next best time is now. So I just took it as, okay, the best time to do it is now, and put all my eggs in the basket and give it a red hot go. And look, if it doesn't, I can't guarantee that anything's going to work out. I can't guarantee that it's going to be a success, but it won't be because I haven't worked hard enough, and it won't be because I've been scared to do it.
Something else.
So I'm all in.
Something else that will probably become apparent with lots of space is that you suddenly realise you can do more than one thing at once. Like you're saying, you're just locked in on this one job, which is stuck on your one assembly table, and that's all you can do. But you have another assembly table next to it, and while that bit's gluing up, you can be starting to work on this other bit. And it takes a while to get your head into two jobs at once. But once you're there and you go, oh, well, now I've got 2 lots of deposit come in this week, and I'm going to get 2 lots of final payment come in this week if I can get these jobs out the door. And I've gone up to having 5 jobs on at once, which is a bit much to deal with. But you get used to juggling more and more, and knowing that all I have to do on this job today is this one thing, and then that can dry, and then I can do this part on this job, and then you just slowly going forward on multiple jobs is actually, there's obviously a point, I think, where it becomes, not beneficial. But there's certainly a sweet spot where you can do multiple things at once, and it is very much beneficial for the business.
Yeah, I'm sort of trying to work the efficiencies out. So where can I, how can I step things up, and where can I find all these efficiencies that used to be so inefficient? Where can I find those efficiencies? And I think like organisation, planning, and having space is just going to be pretty fantastic.
Can I give you a massive tip? Work benches on assembly benches on wheels. Make some nice, or if you can't weld, get somebody local who can weld for you and offer to make them some tables or something. Weld up 4 or 5 big steel framed assembly benches.
Yeah, big heavy things. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I actually hadn't thought of that.
Why would you go with steel over timber?
I find that they stay flatter. Personally, I think once you get a steel frame flat and you put a ply top on it, the ply top is not going to move. The steel frame's not going to move.
Yeah.
You can also distribute weight around them quite easily, if you know what I mean. Whereas with a timber workbench, if you've got a solid timber top on it, you're trying to make sure that there's enough weight in the bottom. Whereas the steel will always weigh more than the ply top on it.
Yeah.
So it's got a good sort of center point. Like that workbench that I made a few months ago with the big lockable casters on it. To do planing and anything at it, I very rarely need to lock the casters. That's the kind of weight that it is.
Yeah.
And also just the ability to reconfigure, to move things about. If you make it the same height as your table saw, I don't know whether it's probably not so necessary on a panel saw, but to use it as an outfeed table and just offer you maximum flexibility in a space, I would not make traditional wooden framed workbenches. You might have one in the corner, but then in terms of actually managing jobs, once you have a big flat table, it's kind of all you need.
Yeah. My assembly table is a torsion box, and the problem with that is all the weight is at the top, like you say. It's got spindly little plywood panel legs, and it's all right, but it's so bulky. I would rather have just some like 20 by 20 square tube welded base and a couple of one big sheet of ply on top would be fine. In the new workshop, I imagine that's what I'll end up getting, a couple of those made.
Good tip, Ryan. Good tip.
Enjoy setting it up. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's overwhelming.
Oh, my other tip would be just constantly sketch it out and look at the way other people have their workshops set up in terms of your in-feed space and your out-feed space, whether you sort of line everything up linearly. That's the one. Thanks, Joe.
In a line
down one side of the space, or whether you have overlapping spaces that you use in-feed and out-feed on different machines. Like,
well, with that amount of space, you can have each of your machines spread out by a couple of meters and not worry.
When he's subdivided, he's got a cafe in the front. He'll be laughing.
You need to get a segue to get from one side of the workshop to the other.
That's the only problem. You don't want your machines so far apart that you've actually got to walk too far, because that becomes annoying.
That's actually something that I've found very, very quickly, is how sore my feet and legs are standing on concrete for 18 hours and walking, just, basically walking around in circles for that long every day. I'm in a world of pain.
Insoles in the boots.
Yeah.
Really good ones.
Well, keep us up to date with pictures. Really keen to see how this all cut, because I think you put up an Instagram story, it would have been last week, where you were in the empty shop. So really, really keen to see how this all comes together.
Yeah, as soon as tomorrow and the next day is over, then I can sort of start to share a little bit more and hopefully get people a bit more involved, which will be fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool. All right, I reckon we're going to leave it there. That's time. So to everyone listening, if you did enjoy the show, please go ahead and give it a rating on iTunes. That really does help us out. Joey and Bryan, thanks again for hanging out. And Leeroy, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've told the guys so many times in the past, we need to get Leeroy on. So I'm stoked we finally got to make it happen.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I've been listening to this podcast since day one, and so it was a real thrill to come on. So thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, no problem at all. All right, everyone, take care, and we will see you in the next show for the season finale.
All right, see ya.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Bye.